names are Yvonne. I'm a Kenyan. Uh, my educational background is based on community development. So I have 7 years of experience in child protection, specifically young girls, children, and adolescents, and women at risk. So my years of experience have enabled me to work closely with children, vulnerable children, specifically refugee asylum seekers, unaccompanied separated children, GBV survivors. So my years of experience have also enabled me to network and partner with agencies like UNHCR, um, and other organizations like Refuge Point, who they also work with refugees, children, and women, elderly persons, persons with disability. So I have been able to conduct best interest assessments, which are it's a UNHCR uh, 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 specific tool when assessing refugee children, refugee and asylum seekers. So it's a tool that's used to actually gauge and just be able to identify protection concerns for those children and be able to offer support where necessary. I've also conducted best interest determinations. That's BIDs. It's a tool that it's also a safeguarding tool in UNHCR, which is also used in conducting assessments for durable solutions. That is settlement and family reunification for refugee children. So the 7 years experience that I've had, I have actually seen it all. I have had moments where you just feel like crying. You don't feel like you're even scared of leaving a child alone because you don't know if that child will be safe when you leave the office or once you've assessed that child. There are moments where you feel like taking that child with you at home because maybe you don't know what might happen to that child because of the risks that are actually associated with that child. So I've also been able to do trainings on matters on child protection, specifically unaccompanied minors and separated children. I've also been able to do child rights training for caregivers, youths, women.
So lots of experience, Yvonne. What
Yeah.
what brought you to this work?
I started as a volunteer when I cleared my campus university. So I needed something to keep me going because I had not yet known what I wanted to do. Like I didn't know what I wanted to do in life. So I was just trying to figure it out. So I ended up working for an organization called Refugee. It's also an organization which helps young girls and women. They empower them. Refugee, yeah. So I ended up doing that volunteering work. In the end, I ended up doing an internship in the same organization. So I developed that passion of learning and hearing stories of vulnerable children, because I'm grateful, like Kenya has not had like any kind of violence where it makes us have to flee our country, but having to accommodate children who flee from, let's say, DRC or Sudan, South Sudan, or Ethiopia, and hearing their stories, like what they've seen during the war, it made me have like a soft spot for them. I felt like I needed to do that social work, just following up, talking to them, encouraging them, uh, and assessing and providing support where it's needed. That's how I developed that passion. That's why for now I think I have like 7 years since I cleared campus. So it's something I really, really love doing. and hopefully I'll not be I won't divert from this career because I feel like this is my calling right now. Yeah,
And you said you're in Kenya. Whereabouts in Kenya are you based?
Nairobi, the
So
capital
give
city.
lovely. Give me a sense of the organisation then that you don't have to name names or anything, but just so we can understand the kind of organisation that you work in. Is it a
Okay.
big organisation? Is it a small team?
Yeah, we are not that big. We were if actually it started as a trust. It was a trust. It's a Jewish organization. So they started like a trust, then now they evolved to an organization. We are not much employees. We're like 140 something employees in the whole organization. So we have different departments. I'll name them. We have the child protection, which I'm in, which is under legal protection. So the legal protection has safe house, has child protection, has a resettlement and the protection department, whereby they're advocates and legal advisors. They help the refugees in legal proceedings in court. They help the refugees in case they are being harassed by the police. They're
Mhm.
taken in. Yeah, so they actually help in advocacy. For child protection, we usually just work closely with the UNHCR. So they help us in donations, so they're like donors. So even the US government also offers donation to us. So we are able to work in the communities. So we usually have also outreaches, whereby I rent a church, like a small church where the refugees in a community where they're populated, right? So they have access to us instead of them traveling all the way
Right.
to our offices. So we make
Yeah.
it easier for them to go to where they are and we offer services from there. So the other department is GBV department. They deal with women, GBV issues, LGBTIQ. So they do trainings, they empower the women, they train women and men on GBV issues because, you know, it's African cultures. There
Yeah.
are women who don't leave marriages just because they're being beaten, they're being abused. It's like it's a norm for them. So they don't find it like it's something that's wrong. So we have to empower them so that they understand this is not okay. You have a voice, you know. So that's
Can
how we
if
work.
Yvonne, just because people will be watching this and just be interesting if you could give us insight, maybe again protecting somebody's confidentiality. Don't give names or anything, but can you think of, you're saying that you've worked with refugees and that's been for the last 7 or 8 years, and you just said before about how many times some of the family stories really touch you. Can you think of an example of um, a family or a person that you worked with where you were really pleased, with the results? Can you think of an example of something just to give us a flavour of the kind of issues that you're dealing with?
Yeah. I'll give an example of an abused child, let's say an orphan, and the child is unaccompanied. Unaccompanied is a child who has no one, like maybe it stays with uh, foster parents or or a caregiver. So a 5-year-old being abused by the caregivers, and he can't like protect himself. So you find such instances when you conduct home visits, you realize the child is withdrawn, the child is scared to speak, the child looks malnourished, because you find that you can actually assess a child by just observing how the child behaves. So by the observations, you have to be very, very careful so that you don't also alarm, like create an alarm, like the caregiver realizes that you're actually going to rescue that child, because you might leave that child in that care arrangement and the child faces more kind of maybe GBV or sexual violence or physical abuse. And when I'm talking about physical abuse, it's like a child being beaten, their bite marks in the back, their scratches, like someone uses his or her nails to abuse that child. So
Mhm.
that's the kind of case I've come across with and in my career, and I actually made sure that that child doesn't go back to that caregiver or that care arrangement. And it's a success story for me because the child ended up being resettled in the US. And right now, yeah. So when we have a case, we work with the case step by step, and you ensure that the child has a success story at the end of it. So one of the successes we feel happy about is seeing a child live in the country of asylum, let's say Kenya, Nairobi, and because in Kenya, most refugees are not able to work and provide for themselves. They depend on casual jobs. They can't get employed, the formal jobs, and they can't get like work permits, stuff like that. So when you get a client or a person of concern and you work with them, then they get resettled, they go to maybe Australia, they go to US, they go to Canada and all that. We
Oh, okay.
believe that
Okay.
they get better opportunities. So such the experience I had with that child, working with the child till the child left the country of asylum, it was a success for me.
Very good. And thinking, how do you get referrals, Yvonne? How do you become aware of a young person or a family that's, seeking asylum and that they require your support? Where do you get your referrals from?
We work closely with partners, community workers. So we
So when
have
you say
community
partners, who do you mean by partners?
partners are other organizations that offer support to refugees and asylum seekers or any vulnerable group. So you find that maybe that organization does not offer financial support or uh, does not offer like legal support, legal aid. So you find they refer those cases to us. They just do the referrals to us directly. Then we get their contacts, we get their locations, we contact them, we give them appointments to come to the offices, or if they are maybe far, we plan on going to the outreaches. Then that's how the clients come in. Or we also have UNHCR. They have a hotline. The hotline, most refugees know that hotline. So when they call,
Right.
they 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 book an appointment, then UNHCR now refers them to our organization. Also, we work with leaders, refugee leaders, their churches, their small groups, the CBOs, community-based organizations, the refugee-led organizations. We train them, we partner with them. So whenever they come across such cases in the communities, they refer them to our organization. That's how they come.
Fabulous. Avi, anything for you? Anything that you want to pick up
So
on?
yeah, Yvonne, how does a child end up unaccompanied? Can you walk us through, like, when you say that, I imagine a child walking from the Sudan or Ethiopia, as you said, to Kenya by himself, a
Mhm.
5-year-old walking by himself. Like, can you give us a sense of how he ends up or she ends up unaccompanied?
When war breaks out in their country of origin, you find that most families separate from each other. So you find maybe the rebels have attacked their home, their village, everyone disperses. So you find a child being unaccompanied because the child has to walk all by himself, or he joins other people who are also fleeing the war, who are not related to them. So luckily, they help those children. They maybe you find like a family, they take in that child, they flee with the child, they ensure the child is safe. So when they come, let's say now through the border, now they get into the country, that's an unaccompanied child, because the people they fled with, they're not related. They're not their relatives, they're not blood related. They're just people who, or a person who just felt like helping this child being safe. They just protect that child. Yeah. And a separated child is a child who flees, let's say with relatives, an uncle, an aunt, or siblings. So when they flee together, that's a separated child.
So an unaccompanied child, you mentioned a 5-year-old. So you're saying that there are cases you've been involved in where a 5-year-old has attached himself or herself to other strangers and they're walking together into Kenya.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And what happens? Can you walk us through the process specific to the child protection piece of what happens when this minor, unaccompanied minor, a 5-year-old, gets into Kenya?
Yeah, so when they get into the country, they first go to DRS. DRS is the Department of Refugee Services. In the good thing with refugees, they have like networks. They usually know when other refugees are coming into the country, so they alert each other. So like, let's say a church, a pastor preaches and says the minors here, they're looking for their families, maybe they came with people that are unaccompanied, like the 5-year-old. Now they get into the border, they get registered in the DRS offices, they get registration, they document the refugee asylum seeker document. Now they are allowed to get into the country, then they now integrate in the communities. So once they get registered, as long as they have that registration number, they're free to walk freely, they're free to go to school, they can actually get services like healthcare, they can, maneuver and survive in the country. So you find that if an unaccompanied minor comes in, they have to get registered on their own document, because you can't mix an accompanied minor with another family and they're not related. This is because it reaches a point where the family might get tired of taking care of this child. So they have to go on their separate ways. So you just have to ensure that unaccompanied minor is, the case is being followed up, monitored, as long as the child has been identified in the community and has been registered. We ensure we conduct a best interest assessment, whereby we identify their protection concerns, we collect their flight history, we collect everything, their data, their biodata, we collect their current care arrangement and everything. We do home visits. So in case of anything, we know where to find this child. We can track the child, maybe in the community or in the care room the child is staying in. So with the assessment we conduct, with the home visits, we're able to now work with the unaccompanied minor until maybe the case is closed. But most cases, they don't end up being closed because they're minors. You can't turn away a minor when they come for services.
And Yvonne, you talk about the placement. Do you place them within foster care? You do that. And is this normally within that community that has fled with the minor? Or is it a
Yes.
Kenyan family?
No, we don't do placement with Kenyans, the
Okay.
host community. We ensure that the child stays with a family they can identify with, like maybe Congolese, you place a child in a Congolese family. A Somali, place a child in a Somali family. Sudan, yeah. So when you take, most instances, Kenyans don't host unaccompanied minors because of the cultural differences and some Kenyans are not aware of refugees, so they don't know their rights. So we have to ensure they stay with people they can actually familiarize themselves with, and they share the same interests. Yeah.
Okay.
So
And
the placement, but if an accompanied minor, sorry to cut you off, if an accompanied minor comes in with a specific family, they have
yes,
attached, they have bonded, we recommend the child maintaining that care arrangement. We can't
like
separate.
right,
Yeah.
like a kinship.
But
It's
if,
all
like a kinship. If the child comes in and has no one to take care of, that's when we identify around the community through now the protection monitors, community workers. They help us identify someone who's willing to take in the child, a
and if
foster
and
now, a
if there
foster home.
and if you don't find a willing family, what's the alternative?
There are CCI, the charitable children's institutions, like the children's home, but they're not recommended because you find some CCIs are not like the child, because that the child does not have that love, the love and care that the child needs, compared to like maybe a single-headed where a mother has two kids, and you just try and talk to that mother and just explain to the mother like this and this and this, so they understand their situation. The good thing with the refugees, they have strong connections with each other, so they actually care about each other. They don't let their own suffer. Let me put it that way. So you find that even if you go to a church, a caregiver is identified in that church. You just reach out and you just ask, is anyone willing to take care of a minor? But they look at ages, because maybe an adolescent, maybe a 17-year-old, you find most families are not willing to take in 17-year-olds because they're almost adulting, they're almost getting to 18. So they prefer maybe 15 and below. Then the rest, they're sometimes they are put into child-headed households, into groups. So let's say a 17 and a 16-year-old, they're put together. Yeah, if we don't find any alternative care.
In the CCI, Yvonne, for us in the West, this is like an orphanage?
Yeah.
It's an orphanage. Okay. And
yes, but
okay.
it's a process.
Okay. And so the is there a here in the West, if you place in a kinship, there's a procedure. There's lots of checks and other processes the kinship provider has to undergo to ensure safety and well-being. And what's the process, if there is one? Can you walk us through that process? How do you place?
Place a child in a CCI. Okay, so first CCI is the last option for us, because we don't recommend children's homes. So when it gets to a point where we have to place that child, maybe the child is facing high security concerns, GBV issues, like a teenage pregnant girl or a child mother, like such instances, that's when we might opt for CCIs. So the first step is conducting an assessment, just trying to figure out where the child came from, how did this child end up maybe in this care arrangement. This care arrangement is not suitable, so we need to change the care arrangement, and the recommendation is placing this child in a CCI for safety concerns. So we go to the police station, we report the case. So once we report the case, you obtain an OB number. You book that number. So you're given an OB number. Then now you go to the sub-county children's office. So the sub-county children's office also does their own assessments, and they actually inquire, why does this child need to be placed in a CCI? Because there has to be a reason. Let's say you say the child has faced GBV currently the child is pregnant, and the child needs healthcare services, needs counseling and everything. So you identify the CCI you're going to take the child to. They write you a placement letter. Now, with the placement letter and the OB number that you have, it's recorded. So in case there are instances where the child's caregiver turns up and says you took the child forcefully, you have something that can protect you. You followed the law. So you avoid child trafficking, because there are instances where they say you took their child by force without their consent and everything. So when you involve the police, you involve the children's office, you are safe. So you take those documents, place the child, the institution the child is going to, they also have their own records. So, but you have to also have an exit strategy. The child can't stay in that institution forever. So you also have to explore options. After this time, after let's say 6 months, the child will be stable. So you integrate the child back to the community. You find maybe another caregiver or a foster family for the child.
Can I just ask a quick question? And I'm just thinking, one of the pieces of work that we would do would be to try and help children understand how they've got to where they are today. And it sounds that some of your children, like you're saying, Yvonne, giving the example of a 5-year-old coming into the country and has probably, suffered horrendous things along the way, been with people that are strangers, which must have been really frightening, not knowing where they're going, who they're going with. But how do you manage that piece of work? Do you do anything to help them try and understand that? Is there any work you do to try and reconnect them with family? What do you do with that, Yvonne?
We usually we make efforts for family tracing for those children. So first, when we do the assessments, we try and refer them to Kenya Red Cross. The Kenya Red Cross helps with tracing of families. So they just take a record, then once maybe they get their families, they contact our organization, or maybe they contact the child's caregiver. Maybe the child is being taken care of by a single-headed. So they have their contacts. They tell them, oh, we found someone might be related to you, and you might come and confirm. Or sometimes in our offices, when we conduct those assessments, the names they mention match maybe with some of the previous past clients we've assessed. So you find the child mentioned, my mother's name is so and so, my dad's name is so and so. So you find in the system the records that we have in our organization. You find when you search in the case management system, you find such names, they're familiar. So you try and check if the parents also mentioned this child's name. That's how now you are able to reunify the families internally in the organization. But in the communities, they also do so. They also have successful family reunifications where families come and they go to maybe a community leader. They say, please try help me find these children. Then the community leaders spread the whole information in WhatsApp groups, like platforms and everything. They write their names. Then when they see, this child looks familiar, they now link them. They now do the reunification. They are very nice, successful family reunifications that happen.
So it's not just the Red Cross, it's not just you, but the communities are also trying to help.
Yeah, they take in people. Maybe a new group just came in yesterday. They are hosted in a church. Then they ask them children's names. They ask the children's names. They announce the names in the WhatsApp platforms, the groups they have. Then they spread all over. Maybe Nairobi. Nairobi is a big city. So they find out, oh, maybe the mother is in Kitengela. Kitengela is another town. So the mother says the child's name. now she comes and confirms, oh, this is my child. That's how they reunify.
I've got one. Sorry, I'm going to pass back to Avi in a second, but can I just check how is your organisation set up then? So you talked about it was a trust, and then you talked about it changing over time. But so is there a government tier, and then there's your tier? How do the two work together? Is there a government department or
No.
no? Okay.
Yeah, so it just grew because of the services we provide. We like they're kind of a lot right now. We have like gender and GBV, we have legal protection, we have MHPSS, mental health, psychosocial support department, we have economic and inclusion department, and the fundraising department. So you find that like 5 different departments, they had to now grow, and our organization right now, it's an open door policy. We don't turn away clients at our offices. There are some organizations where they just go case by case basis or through referrals. But for us, it's different. What we do, the door is open from Monday to, let's say, Thursday. Anyone can come in and seek services. That's how now we got maybe the funding from US, because they realize that we serve a very large population of refugees in Nairobi. So the numbers are very, very high compared to other organizations. So they preferred growing. Now we registered to become an international NGO.
I'm with you.
But yeah, we work closely with the government. The government comes in terms of maybe we need some kind of paperwork, legality. We need some kind of, let's say, bid panels. You know, when I've talked about conducting BIDs. BIDs, yeah, durable solutions. Let's say we are resettling a child, and these are unaccompanied minors. We are trying to resettle them. We've initiated tracing, it's not successful. The children are just suffering in the country of asylum. Now we opt resettling these children to have a better life in a third country. So what we do is involve the Department of Refugee and the Children's Office. So they're the ones who have to actually sign for that assessment, for that resettlement to go through. They are the ones who give authorization, and the UNHCR. So the government comes in such instances. If we have maybe police, we need the police to intervene in some kind of security issue, legal issue, or anything. Yeah, so we have to always have the government by our side.
I'm with you. And are you inspected by the government then? How does that relationship work then?
The government, how we work closely with the government.
Yeah, are you inspected? Do you have to? I mean, in this country, even if we've got NGOs, we've still got to make sure that they're fit for purpose. So is that what would happen then? You'd have government offices that would be inspecting your offices to make sure that you're carrying out your duties in the right way. Is that another way that you might be working together?
They don't actually come physically to inspect us, but what they do, what I know, the CCIs, before placing a child in a CCI, they usually inspect those CCIs, how they are. Are those CCIs like safe for those children? So they do regular monitoring in those CCIs. Yeah, but for us, our work, we're in line with the DRS, the Department of Refugee Services. That's a government office, so they usually know what we do. They are usually involved in our meetings, our discussions, any kind of anything that involves refugees. The DRS has to be involved.
Okay. Okay. Abby, anything for you?
And so, Yvonne, as I understand, if we were to summarize, your focus as a child protection worker in that department is to ensure that refugee children who come from countries, as you said, who've experienced war, disruption, that these unaccompanied children are placed in safe homes and are reunited. And
Yeah.
if there is any form of abuse within those placements, you intervene as well, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Can you also tell us, we've heard from other practitioners like yourself from Kenya. We've had the privilege of interviewing others from Kenya, and they speak a lot about the cultural aspect of the what I mean by that is individuals who will come from other countries with cultural beliefs and customs and how that impacts child protection in Kenya. Can you speak a little bit about what are the challenges that you experience, if any, around the cultural beliefs about children and families?
So some of the cultural beliefs of families, I've talked about GBV. The GBV, we find that a family whereby a man abuses, sorry about that noise, a man abuses the wife in the household and their children. So you try maybe counseling the wife to consider maybe separating from the husband, or maybe you try and just make them come to a common ground just to solve their issues and everything. But you find that you might talk to that woman today. She tells you, yeah, I'm leaving my husband, blah, blah, blah. Then the next week you see them now together in the office, they have now reconciled. Then the woman complains, oh, my husband still beats me, but I can't leave him because I have children with him. And my culture does not allow me like leave my husband just because I'm being beaten. So they actually stick to those marriages to till end. You also find let's say a child, you found, let's say, a child who has been defiled, a pregnant girl. She'll be scared to say anything. She'll just keep it to herself till maybe worse comes to worse, she realizes she's pregnant and she's scared of telling the caregiver because she feels like the caregiver will chase her out. So they find it like rape. If you get raped, that's a big sin. Like shouldn't get raped. So children who are born out of rape, they are seen as outcasts. Let me put it that way. So you find a woman gets raped, but the husband does not accept that child because the child is an outcome of rape. So the husband cares more about his own children. So the child who was born out of rape is discriminated in the household. The child is treated like, differently from the other children. So you find the wife, now the mother of that child, cannot leave her husband. She has to stick there and try and defend the child. But sometimes they all get beaten, the child out of rape and the mother. So you find maybe such instances, the cultural issue, especially feeling like you've committed a sin because you've been raped. It's a big issue for some refugees, like the cultures. So you find you have to really give that child time to process the whole thing. You find sometimes the child comes to the office, but the child has been defiled several times while in the country of origin, or maybe when they were fleeing, when they were boarding the trucks, they are being defiled. But when they come to the offices, they don't say anything. They just keep quiet till when maybe you've done counseling for them. They have been, because of the trauma and everything, they now open up later on. And they tell you, don't tell my mother, or don't tell my caregiver, don't tell my aunt. If my aunt finds out, it will be an issue. So let's just keep it between us. So you just try and understand. You don't judge them. So even if a child comes to me and says he was raped, I won't go to the caregiver directly and tell the caregiver, this child has told me she was raped. I have to approach it in a professional way. Sorry, my battery is going off. I have to approach it in a professional way. So in a way that the child won't feel like I sneaked on her. So that's our work. You find a child being abused in the household, it's normal for them. So when the child comes to the office, she says, oh, I'm being abused and all that, but if you ask the caregiver tells you that's normal in our culture. We have to do this so that the children can grow in a disciplined way. That's the discipline. That's how they discipline their children. So you just have to accommodate them and understand them.
And
Or
that must
maybe
be, I'm not putting words in your mouth. I'm trying to understand, thinking about what you've said, Yvonne, that, children might have travelled with groups of people across, as Abby was saying, escaping atrocities, escaping war. They've come to Kenya, and then I think from what I'm hearing from you, that one of the things is to try and reconnect them with family, but where that's not possible, to keep them connected with people that they've travelled with that will probably share a similar culture to themselves. So I can see the real benefits of that. I can see that it's good to keep people connected with their culture. But does that also cause you struggles when maybe they're with a group of people who share the belief that something, well, that's how it is in our country, and it may not be the same for how it is in Kenya? Does that cause you some friction with some of those groups? So, for example, if it was, acceptable that a man beat his wife, for example, or if it was, it's the belief that actually a woman's brought shame on the family or the community, does that cause problems for you as a worker when you're trying to negotiate working with different cultures?
Yeah. It does, because you find instances where you can see that woman who's been beaten, you assess the woman, you try and give some kind of advices. Then the husband comes and says, you're breaking my marriage, or you're trying to break my family. So they put the blame on you. So you have to be very careful how you approach that situation. You don't just tell the woman directly, leave your husband, no. Or sometimes you just tell them to report it to the police station. The police will now handle that case. It's out of my hands. So whatever happens, you reported, you have an OB, it's up to you. But if the abuse comes now to affect the children's well-being, I have a right to now intervene and maybe rescue those children from that abusive family. So that's when you now take those children out of that kind of environment. Then the adults can now sort out their issues. Yes, you can't force an adult to leave a marriage they're committed to, even if they're suffering, they just stay there till. But if it affects the children, now I have a right to come in. Maybe the child is malnourished, the child is not eating well, the child is not going to school, such things. I have to now intervene and try and do something about it.
I'm just wondering if there's anything that you'd want to say to anybody watching this. Sometimes we have misconceptions about people's jobs. People think that the job's one thing, and we as workers might think actually that's not the truth, it's something different. Is there anything that there's perceptions of your role, Yvonne, that you'd like to clarify to people watching this? Anything that would be helpful.
Yeah. People, okay, from my experience and how I work, I have come across some maybe professionals. They are so scared dealing with children. They find like children are so vulnerable, you know. So you find some cases are so sensitive. So you shouldn't put the child at more risk by exposing that child. So you just have to be very careful in my line of work when you're dealing with children, especially uh, minors who have gone through a lot of trauma and all that. So you should be very careful when dealing with such cases. It's not easy being a case worker or a social worker. It takes a lot of passion and dedication. Sometimes you might lose sleep in the middle of the night, just thinking of a child you met during the day. You wondering, has this child eaten? Has this child like had sex? Has this child accessed healthcare? So you feel like even giving out what you have, but you can't because my line of work does not allow me to go in my pocket. But sometimes you feel like going in your pocket, giving out just food, clothes and everything, just donating. So people should embrace refugee children. That's what I can say, especially children who come from countries of war. They've seen it all. They've seen their parents being killed. They have seen houses being torched. Let's say, for example, what's happening in DRC right now. Houses are being burned down. Children, so the people who have seen their parents being raped and killed, they've seen it all. So we should be compassionate and embrace these children. And right now they are in Nairobi. So our organization has tried training them on their rights, because you find refugee children, sometimes they don't know their rights. They feel discriminated in schools, in the host communities. So when you train them about their rights, they have equal rights like the other children, the Kenyan children, then it empowers them. They won't feel left out. They won't feel like I'm different from this other child, So yeah, social work is a calling. It's a blessing at the same time. It can drain you mentally if you're not prepared to encounter traumatic experiences or yeah. So I'll call out to everyone who can. I'll speak for my country right now, since the funding from US has actually affected our refugees in the country. So other countries are welcomed to Kenya and donate and maybe partner with organizations that are actually impacting in the refugee world. These are vulnerable groups. They can't actually they can't work, they can't empower themselves if there are no funds. They need a better life. They can't go back to their countries where they were persecuted. Their families were killed. So let's come all support the refugees. Let's stand with refugees. Let's protect them and empower them so that they can also feel like they're welcomed and loved. Yeah, we are all humans. So I can't imagine my country going into war and I have to run to another country for safety. Will that country take me in? And such instances, you feel like you've left all your belongings, you've left your properties in your country, then you move to another country where all you have is just maybe a few clothes, maybe you don't even have anything. You just had to run for your life and you have to start all over again. Yeah, so if we come together, we can make an impact in these lives. As a humanitarian, I support and I stand with refugees all over the world. And I love what I do, and I hope people with passion in child protection should not be afraid working with children. It's a very, very sensitive department, but at the same time, it's something that can actually give you a lot of resilience and yeah, empower you. Yeah, thank you.
I think that's a good place to finish, Yvonne. And a huge thank you, for spending your time and giving us insight. I feel very grateful for hearing about your work and the job that you do every day. And I'm sure it'd be really interesting for people watching this as well today. So a huge thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne.
Thank you too. Thank you.